For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Sara Frawley. I'm a naturopathic physician. So a lot of people don't know what that is. A naturopathic physician is a medical doctor. We go to 4 years of medical school. I was actually a chemist before I did this for about 6 years, show my age a little bit. And I actually went to Bridgeport. University of Bridgeport is the only school on the East Coast for this program. And, and so 4 years of medical school, I learned everything those guys and other guys know, right? I learned anatomy, physiology, pharmaceuticals. But on top of that, we get a lot more pathology, to be honest. We pride ourselves in knowing and being able to figure out the root cause of what's going on, right? In my world, I have a lot of Band-Aids, but I'd rather figure out why you're bleeding. So I always tell my patients, right, first interview. So along with pharmaceuticals, we get a ton of nutrition. I have 4 semesters. I think a Yale medical student gets about 2 weeks. I have 4 semesters of herbalism, homeopathy, hydrotherapy, chiropractic, all the fun stuff. Right? So again, what I really like to do is be a medical detective. I like to figure out what's wrong with people. And a lot of times, unfortunately, in this society, we struggle with the idea of not being able to find happiness, right? We're constantly searching for happiness, but that's kind of the problem, right? We're searching for happiness in the external, outside of ourselves. So what I kind of want to talk about today is this idea of finding happiness within and how to practice that and how to grow that so that you can actually be happy all the time. Even when you're sad, you can be happy all the time, right? So I want to start with a quote, very famous philosopher, German philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer. Happiness belongs to those who are sufficient unto themselves. For all external sources of happiness and pleasure, by their very nature, are highly uncertain, precarious, ephemeral, and subject to change. Everything around us is subject to change. But if we can be constant, if we can understand what we're feeling and express it properly, we can actually grow our happiness and find happiness even in the dire of situations. Cool, that's it. We done? Yeah, is that all good? We understand? We can leave now? Yeah? So I have a couple ideas. So I found my own happiness. So how I found this profession, I struggled with anxiety and depression for most of my life. I was a fast food junkie, amongst other things. And actually, when I lost my last chemistry job, I couldn't afford my fast food habit. I could only afford rice, broccoli, and chicken. And I felt amazing after that. And I came across this program and knew this is what I was supposed to do for the rest of my life. So I love sharing this idea of happiness and how we can actually grow our happiness. And one of the big things that we don't get taught as children, and we really should, is emotional intelligence. Right? And so when I say emotional intelligence, I'm talking about this idea of the capacity to be aware of our emotions and to control them, and also how to communicate them with our friends, family, spouses, co-workers, so that we don't create conflict. We actually help to resolve things, right? To get our needs, right? So we'll talk a little bit about emotional intelligence, because when we're able to communicate our feelings and needs, again, not only do we feel heard, which is an amazing sensation and a need, right? But often we get the need that we really want to get in the end. So there's a couple ways of doing this, but I want to talk about the way not to do it. And sometimes what we can do is if we can see what we call the 4 horsemen of the relationship, okay? If we can see ourselves doing these things, we can start checking ourselves, right? We can be like, oh, you snack, I'm doing that, right? And we can start correcting ourselves. So the 4 horsemen of the relationship starts with criticism, right? We attack the person, not the action. And that's very important. We want to talk about when we communicate what's going on in a conflict, we don't want to blame people. We want to talk about how their actions made us feel, right? It's a different thing. Defensiveness. This is a hard one. It's so easy to take offense, right? Our egos get in the way. I'm a doctor. My ego gets in the way quite a bit. And I have to recognize that and wrap my head around that. Often apologize to people for that. It's a hard thing. So it's so easy to really let that ego get in the way. We naturally can tune people out when we feel like we're being offended, right? We can make excuses, we blame others, and we don't take responsibility for our actions. It is a really easy thing to go on the defense, right? So checking yourself when you're feeling defensive and trying to understand, why am I in defense right now? Why am I feeling this way? And there's a couple ways we can talk about how we're going to figure out feelings in a minute. Contempt, right? That's another one of the horsemen of a relationship. When we blame, right, others, when we have blatant disrespect for other people, right? When we roll our eyes, when we judge people, when we make fun of people, when we bully people, right? When we have a sense of contempt. I mean, a lot of us are with other people, right? And that can unfortunately grow over time in a relationship. So understanding that idea of contempt and catching yourself when you do go to roll your eyes at your spouse, it kind of helps to kind of, again, click in and go, why am I feeling that way right now? And then stonewalling. Stonewalling's a big one. And this one's a hard one for me. I'm a Cancer, right? And as a crab, I go in my shell when I'm uncomfortable, right? And especially in relationships, I can go, and it took me a really long time to recognize that I was stonewalling and really stopping communication because I felt uncomfortable. Okay? So if you can find those things in your life and start checking them, you're going to actually be able to, it's all about practice, right? If you can, it takes some time to start going, oh, smack, I'm being defensive right now, and to be able to correct that and figure out why you're doing that. And it takes practice. This is not an overnight thing. This is a life's journey, right? So we're going to get into forgiveness in a minute, but let's talk about how to identify those emotions and how to communicate them. So there's some great ways to do this. Highly recommend looking up the needs and feelings list by Nonviolent Communication. So Nonviolent Communication, I think it's .org. They have a whole thing of feelings and needs, and I actually have a copy, and I'm happy to show you guys that later. Big old list of it, and it's great because what you can say is you can help to communicate. I feel this way because this need is not being met, right? So it helps you identify things and why you're feeling something, but also can help you express why that's happening as well to whoever is not supplying that need to you, right? It's also important to remember that your feelings are your feelings for a reason. They serve you on some level. Again, you're feeling that way because something's not happening. Something's not being met. So if you can honor those feelings, that's really important. We all have those feelings. Let's not shut them down. Let's identify them and understand what's going on. So again, I have my needs and feelings list up on my fridge in my kitchen, right? Right front and center. So when I'm flustered and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, I can go back to that list and go, okay, I'm feeling this way because this is what I'm not getting in my life. Such a simple thing, and it's so helpful in identifying and being able to communicate what you need, right? What's great is our friend Tony Robbins, not our guru, but our friend, Tony Robbins, he actually has limited that all those big needs, it's a list, the needs list is like a full page, right? He's limited to 6 for us, which is awesome and very helpful. So some of the big needs in our life, certainty, right? A sense of safety, that's important to all of us. Variety, we all need stimulus on some level, right? So they're kind of counter, right? Certainty and variety, right? But I don't know if you guys have ever felt stuck, but I think there's nothing worse than feeling stuck, right? So variety is so important in our lives. Significance, a need to feel special and worthy, right? And that really starts within and making sure that we know that we're worthy and we know that we're special. And that's very hard for a lot of people, right? We're not taught this stuff. So it's important to start recognizing, and a good way to start recognizing that is catching when you do a good thing, right? Catching when you say, oh, I did that really well. I did that awesome, right? If you can start doing that, you start feeling your worth, and it's a great way to do it. With the significance thing, though, you have to be careful because you can take it to the extremes, right? You can be a hater, right? And you can hurt other people and put other people down to make yourself feel better. So like you don't want to be a hater, but you don't want to take it to the next level either where you are striving for too much significance and too much uniqueness. Because what that does is isolates you from your next need, which is a need for connectivity, right? So connecting and love, right? So if we strive too much for that significance, we also lose that group dynamic. We lose that connection with the people we love. So speaking of love, it's really helpful to understand love, and if you guys haven't read the 5 love languages yet, I highly recommend it, right? So the 5 love languages are gifts, words of affirmation, quality time, thank you, touch, what's the other one I'm missing? Acts of service. They say acts of service, right? So what's great if you know, like I'm quality time, right? You can tell me I'm wonderful up the wazoo, doesn't mean a thing to me if you don't make time for me, right? So that's how I receive love. How I give love is often in quality time and in gifts. But it's great if you know this, you can express it to your loved ones, you can express it to your coworkers, right? I've expressed this to my coworkers. I've said, it's really important that on Wednesdays we sit down and we have time together, right? And if you know your coworkers' love languages, then you know how you can interact with them better too, right? So being able to know your love language, and you can totally just go online and take a quiz too, which is great. And we usually border on two. I have a gift thing too, and I think it comes from my grandfather. My grandfather gave love and gifts. So for me, gifts mean love as well. So if we're able to express that to other people, it's very helpful when we're communicating love, but when we're receiving love too. Right? And another need as well is growth, right? Our need to develop and expand. We all need goals. Again, that idea of being stuck is so nerve-wracking and feels terrible, but if we have our goals, our strive, right? And that gets us into this idea of self-actualization, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then another need is contribution. How great does it feel when we give back, right? That is a big need that we really don't talk about, but we feel such joy when we give back. That's a basic need that we really don't talk about all the time. So having those six, again, so let's talk about those six one more time, right? We have certainty, variety, significance, connection or love, growth, and contribution. Some 6 basic needs. So if you can remember those, and you can then, again, express what you're missing, right? So if you're feeling a certain way, maybe it's because you're missing one of those needs in your life. And so if you can, again, identify it, then you can correct it, right? If you know it's love and connection, you can communicate that with your significant other, with your friends, with your family, so that they can understand why you're feeling that way. If it's just like you're bored and you feel awful and stuck, why? What's going on, right? Do you not have any goals? Are you not giving back? So understanding those needs can help you actually communicate better, but also understand your feelings and why you're in that moment, right? Another great way of finding happiness, of course, is letting go, right? Letting go is easy for some. Elsa was right. It's all about letting go. It's all about letting go, right? It really is. It's really hard though, right? And a part of that letting go is forgiveness. Right? Forgiveness is so hard. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying to forgive them for them. Forgiving does not mean forgetting, right? Forgiveness is for yourself. Forgiveness is so that you feel better. Screw them. They did something terrible to you. They don't deserve your forgiveness. You don't have to tell them that you're forgiving them. You're forgiving them so that you feel better, right? And that's important. Again, that takes practice. And how we do that is not going on the offense, right? Not being defensive. So that again is about recognizing how we're feeling, right? Why are we feeling defensive? What's going on? What need is not being met? We all get angry on the road. We all get a little road rage from here and there, right? But you have to recognize that person driving really poorly is probably sleep deprived, malnourished, and dehydrated. So if you can almost make it yourself feel bad for the person, it's a little easier to forgive them, right? And again, that's important for you and your sanity, right? You don't have to forgive them for them. Forgive them for you. But also forgive you for you, forgive yourself. I'm one of the hardest people on myself. I'm the first to say that, and I know a lot of people that are. And it's really important to start forgiving yourself, right? You're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. I've said this a lot this week. Whatever decision you make is the right decision. Right? So it's really important to understand that it's okay. We all make mistakes, and it's important to forgive, okay? Ourselves and others, because we're all just fighting our own battles, right? And if we can kind of see that, it kind of mellows out, and it kind of helps us understand why other people might be doing something that we might feel attacked. They're not doing it on purpose. Usually it's their own struggles inside that they're projecting, right? So again, it's understanding what's going on, understanding what they're feeling, understanding what you're feeling, and what needs might not be met in your life and in their life, right? So being able to do that is really, really important. Taking responsibility for your own actions. This one's also really tough, right? It's okay. Again, forgiveness. It's okay to freak out once in a while. it's really okay. What's not okay is to freak out all the time, right? So again, sometimes it's really hard, right? For women, sometimes you might be in that time of month where it's really hard not to freak out, right? But it's interesting, if you can recognize that that's what's going on, all of a sudden that happens less and less, right? And again, that's the idea of recognizing your emotions and how you're feeling, but also being like, maybe I did do something wrong. And that's okay, because we can forgive ourselves that we did that thing wrong, right? So it's okay. Everything's okay. We can forgive, right? We all make mistakes, and if we can wrap our heads around that, it makes life a lot easier and lighter. I love this idea too that we can choose. We can choose how we respond to things, okay? Again, sometimes, some days, a little easier than others, right? But I always tell the story of how I drove out to Rhode Island to meet some friends at the beach, okay? I got there a little late because I was like, I'm going to enjoy my day, I'm going to take my time. I get there, no parking whatsoever. My friends are already on the beach enjoying their time. I can't find a single spot, right? I'm driving around, and of course other people are driving around, and we're all kind of getting angry at each other. I took a deep breath, and I was like, I could go home right now in a huff, or I can go to the clam shack around the corner and get some fried clams and try again. And that's exactly what I did. I went and I grabbed some clams, I hung out for a little bit, read my book. As soon as I got back, there was a spot to park at the beach, right? We can choose if we decide what we want to do, right? We can get angry, we can get upset, or we can say, all right, let's try this again, right? So again, that's really important. Recognizing what's going on, recognizing how we're feeling, and how we're going to express those feelings, okay? And I think you just saw what I did, but that breath work there is really important. I took a deep breath, all right? How important is that? What do we do when we get upset? We hold our breath.
Hold it.
Right? So breath work is so important. And it doesn't have to be long meditations where you hold one nostril and you do the big deep breath. It doesn't have to be that. Before every patient I see, I just take a deep breath, sigh it out, right? So I want everyone to do that with me. So deep breath, sigh it out, right? If you can do that between, again, when our emotions get flared up, if you can just do that, it gives you that second for your conscious thought to kick in so that we don't act on those maybe slightly irrational emotions, right? So that breath work is really important. So also, I wasn't going to talk about this, but I thought about it yesterday. Recognizing fear. A lot of times we don't do things because we're afraid, right? People say this to me as a single woman, 35 years old, single. I'll go do whatever I want to do. If I want to go to a movie, I'm going to go to a movie, right? I wanted to go to Bash Bitch Falls yesterday. I went to Bash Bitch Falls yesterday. But how many of my girlfriends have been like, I couldn't do that by myself? And it's like, why not? Well, what are you afraid of, right? So recognizing what that fear might be can actually help you as well to make that conscious decision. All right, is that a rational fear? Right? Because a lot of times it's like, well, someone might see me and think weird of me, but who cares, right? So we're afraid of judgment, right? I know I was always afraid of making a fool out of myself. That was something that kept me from going to the grocery store when I struggled with anxiety. For some odd reason, I was so afraid to make a mistake and have someone look at me like I was doing something wrong. Like I was so afraid of that. And as soon as I could recognize that that was going on, I was like, what do I care if they think that way of me, right? So again, recognizing fears and what they might be doing to stop you from reaching your goals and your happiness is really important. Self-actualization. So I touched on this. So self-actualization is the realization or fulfillment of your talents or your potentials, right? We all have something we're either great at or even better, makes us feel good inside when we do. Right? And so the idea of self-actualization came from Maslow. Maslow was an American philosopher, and he had the hierarchy of needs as well. Okay? His hierarchy needs, physical needs, right? Makes sense. Belonging, again, that love connection, these overlap a lot with Tony Robbins' needs. Esteem, self-esteem, confidence, respect, right? And then self-actualization. What are you great at, right? And it doesn't have to be like, I'm really lucky. I found a job I love, and I find self-actualization from that job, right? I'm very lucky. But it can be in the smallest things, right? So even when I have a rough day, and I feel like nothing went right, if you can come home after a rough day, and maybe have a little vice, I pour a little wine, have an IPA, sit down quietly for a second, and say, what did go well today? What did I do well today? And usually if you can be there and sit down for a minute, you can find at least one good thing. And you can find self-actualization in everyday life. And that's really important. Again, finding it outside, if you have an art that you're really good, a sport that you're really good at, like that's awesome and wonderful. But finding those little joys in life every day, that's really important. And I know you're gonna tell me you don't have time to do that, because I hear that a lot in what I do, right? But again, it doesn't have to be an hour long. It's taking a second, and this is where the mindfulness comes into play, right? It's taking that second when you're doing something that is routine, okay? Like, I don't know, doing the dishes, right? Something you don't have to consciously think about. You can take that time to be mindful and have a second to reach out to gratitude, right? Look at what you're grateful for that day, or look at all the good things that did happen that day, right? Taking that breath in those moments is really important. And if you're not treating yourself on a regular basis, you should be. You should be having a treat yourself day pretty regularly, right? So if you're not Parks and Rec fans, they did this in Parks and Rec. They have a day where they treat themselves and they do whatever they want to do. So as a healthcare professional, I have to do this a little more regularly, right? I do it with things like going and get my nails done. But if you're not doing this like quarterly, like you really need to start instilling this, right? This is a great example of this. This is a treat yourself weekend, right? We're doing whatever we want to do this weekend, all right? And that's really important. And it's important to set those days because we'll forget about it, right? We get really busy. So it's important to be like, plan ahead and be like, I know in a few months I'm going to be burned out. So in a few months, I'm going to plan this vacation right now for that. So you also have something to look forward to, some goals, right? Meeting some of our needs while actually practicing treating yourself and growing your self-esteem and your self-worth. So how do we implement this? And I talked a little bit about this, but practice. Everyday practice is so very, very, very important, right? So you want to do a dedicated practice and you want to do an integrated practice. So the dedicated practice, I'm talking about the mindfulness, right? Meditation, right? Exercise. So when I say mindfulness, right, we're talking about the idea of being present. So often we go to the future or we think about the past, right? So someone very smart, I don't remember who said this, but I always quote it, but thinking about the future is anxiety and ruminating about the past is depression, right? So if you can check yourself when you're doing that, and it's hard, we all do it, but forgive, right? Even Buddhist monks mind wander when they're meditating. That's okay. The lesson is not being present. The lesson is coming back to the present, okay? So again, it's all about forgiveness. So when our mind wanders towards the future, or, oh, I shouldn't have done that, it's taking a second, taking a breath, and saying, not today, and coming back to the present, okay? I like to practice mindfulness in everyday life. So my rule is I close every door the way I opened it. I do not let doors slam, right? It's a simple way of being mindful. And when I do let a door slam, I know I'm not being mindful, right? So try it sometime. Try closing every door the way you open it. Not only does it like give you a minute of mindfulness, but also it creates a different dynamic. I get tense when I hear the doors in here slam. I don't know about you guys.
I just said, oh my God, it could be quieter here tonight.
Yes, you know what I mean? So, but if you do that, you also create less tension for other people. It's wonderful, right? You're creating balance and happiness for other people by just taking a second and not allowing the door to slam, right? But mindfulness can be practiced in other ways. So I like that one, eating. Like I did the exercise 2 years ago here where I made them take an almond and eat an almond. They had 5 minutes to eat one almond, right? Eating mindfully is very, very, very important, right? We shovel our food. We eat in the car in this country, right? So it's really important. I always put my fork down. right? I'm eating, I put my fork down. I also like to eat with chopsticks, because you can't shovel with chopsticks, right? So you have to take your time, it's very mindful. Exercise, you can be mindful in exercise, right? I love bar class for that reason. And there's bar class tomorrow, which I'm really excited about. So you haven't done bar class, right? If ballet, Pilates, and yoga had a baby called Chuck Norris, because it kicks your butt, right? But you have to be mindful when you're doing it, because you're like up on your toes, you're doing this, and if you're not being mindful, you're gonna fall over, right? And that's why yoga's great too. You have to be mindful in yoga, or you're gonna fall over, right? So using exercise as a form of mindfulness is a great way to do it. And I highly recommend trying all sorts of different exercises. Not every exercise, I'm not a runner. God bless the people that run, but I'm not a runner. Look for your form of exercise. And again, doesn't have to be crazy. Doesn't have to be an hour each day, right? It really can be between patients. When I have the thought of, I don't have time to exercise today, I make my ass get up and I do 10 burpees in my office. Because I know I have that 10 seconds. I know I have that minute that I can do that in, right? So that's my other rule for myself. Is when I think, oh, I don't have time to exercise, I take that minute where I would ruminate about the idea that I don't have time for exercise, and I will do some form of exercise, right? Really quick, doesn't have to be crazy. So that's the idea of doing dedicated practice, and the integrated practice is what we were just talking about, right? Yes, exactly. Thank you, Doris Lynn. Thank you, excellent example. The integrated practice is what I was just talking about, right? Using the needs and feelings list to really identify what's going on, taking that breath, and being able to communicate it better with other people. And what's great is sometimes when you use that, it just pisses the other people off a little bit more. So it's kind of fun. You can kind of play with it a little bit. It's a fun thing with dating, because I know if a guy is not down and I use my I feel statements, and it makes them more angry, I know I'm like, all right, red flag, right? I'm out, right? So you can actually tell where someone is while actually expressing and communicating well, and your voice will be heard, which is so important. And often when you speak that way, your need gets met, because someone will understand where you are, right? Instead of just being like, oh my God, I can't believe you did this, saying, yo, I felt like this because this happened. It's a totally different approach, and people are a lot more receptive to it. Again, especially at work settings, so important, right? How many of us have worked in terrible work settings? And another way of doing this is trading our expectations for appreciations, right? So the idea that it's important to have expectations. It is. It's important to have expectations. What's terrible is when we have really high expectations, right? That only hurts ourselves when we have high expectations of other people. I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy. When we have high expectations of other people, right? Those expectations aren't going to be met, right? And we feel that. They don't feel that, we feel that. So looking at when you have too high of an expectation, don't get me wrong. Again, 35 years old, single, dating, I have expectations, right? But I don't allow myself to have too high expectations, because then again, it doesn't matter what they do. They're not going to feel it when I get hurt that those expectations aren't met. So this is a Tony Robbins quote as well. It's trading your expectations for appreciations, right? Backing down on what you might expect out of a weekend, out of a person, out of a day, out of a job, and just finding the little appreciations. Your whole mentality about that situation or person will totally shift. It's a really cool thing. It's something I've been really practicing lately. Absolutely love it. Works really well. Again, it's practice. Some days I can't do it, and that's okay. I have to forgive myself, right, and let it go. And if you can do that, again, the lesson is getting back to it. It's not always being there and present and doing these things. It's about getting back to it. It's about forgiving yourself and getting back to it. So I'll finish with another quote. Happiness is letting go of what you think your life is supposed to be, right? If we have these great expectations of ourselves as well that we can't meet, we're going to be flustered. We're going to be frustrated. Instead of just being like, you are exactly where you're supposed to be right now. You're exactly where you're supposed to be right now, right? Luckily, I believe in reincarnation, but a lot of people believe, in an afterlife, and that this is their one life. So what matter? What does it matter if you think you should be somewhere else. You're not. You're here right now, and that's okay, and that's great.